Today we are cutting through the noise of one of the most abused terms in DevOps and SRE world, observability. Everyone is selling it, everyone is saying they do have it, but most systems are still black boxes. Joining me is Bhoopesh Sharma, an SRE architect who has seen the good, the bad, and the expensive side of this. Bhoopesh, let's be honest. Is observability just monitoring with a 3x higher price tag?
Well, I definitely like the topic that you have chosen. And first of all, thanks a lot for having me on the show. Thanks, Kuldeep. And now this is a very interesting topic. Now, yeah, nowadays observability is not a pure observability that we used to have, 3, 4 years ago. You can say 3, 4 months ago. Now it has a lot of flavors introduced in it, and it is getting costly day by day. It has a flavor of MCPs, it has flavor of AI, and a flavor of costing. Like people are pushing so much of data, telemetry data, but they're not utilizing their data. So that is a real pain. So observability is a new ball game altogether nowadays. Just to cut short,
Okay,
my
but
answer.
I'm also coming it from the traditional world, and there we used to get, a certain error, and then the alert used to go. And today also, now if I have a dashboard and I still see an error, I know something is wrong. Why do I still need to spend hundreds and thousands on the entire melt signal, which are like metrics, event, log, and traces? Whereas the troubleshooting is still haunting my engineers during the outage.
Yeah. So that is right. But nowadays the trends has been changed. If we really talk a difference between 2 years ago and 3 years ago in today's world, we are not sending thousands of metrics, logs, and traces data. Now we are specifically, when I talk about production, for any observability tool, you talk about Grafana, Datadog, or anything, we normally send only the things that are really important. And when you see a 5xx error onto your dashboard, you're not doing it right away or acting on that alert. There are certain agents like Grafana Assistant or for Datadog Bits AI, you can be in loop. When I say human in loop, nowadays the observability is not about getting an alert and reducing or resolving that thing with the help of source code modification. There's a human which is in a loop, and then that the resolution is being done with the help of assistant. It's more of a AI ops. So we are reducing those alerts or noises. First of all, from the data side, we are not pushing thousands of data. We are doing the well cardinality analysis. Then we are pushing only the relevant data. Once the relevant data is coming, then we are using MCPs and AI-based assistant to reduce the extra noise that we were getting 2 years ago. That is a major pain point that I've seen in multiple production-based environment. If I talk about, so now to cut short my answer, we are having two-phase process. First of all, we are getting only the relevant data using the cardinality process of any tool, Grafana, and then using Grafana Assistant or other any other AI assistant to resolve those pretty nominal issues like 5xx error,
Mhm.
404 error, and all those errors,
No,
and keeping
for
human in
sure
loop.
that those are
Yeah.
the latest trend. However, if we just go do a deep dive, basically the observability always talks about the three pillar, and that has been like the trend for like almost 10 years. And the main trend within those is collect everything. So
Yeah.
the people was like sending all their data, and then companies are, "Oh, yes, we need to collect all the logs as well." And now they started paying more for their observability tooling in comparatively to their actual the cloud infrastructure. So now are you saying is collect everything actually a failing strategy in 2026?
Well, it's a very, very valid question, and I've seen it personally in multiple production environments. So rather than collecting everything, we should wisely collect what to collect, right? So meaning definitely metrics are important, logs are important, and traces are important. But doing a proper marriage between metrics and logs and traces is actually giving you fruitful response. So first of all, first step you need to do at your production side, you need to send only the relevant data. Like you should filter out all the data which is not needed and have a transaction level monitoring, which is very, very important. Not everyone is enabling those monitoring. Meaning, if you talk about LGTM stack of Grafana, Locky, Grafana, Tempo, Mimir, if you properly instrument your application, and I say instrument, either you can use OpenTelemetry based instrumentation. Now I am touching this topic because to get a marriage between logs and traces, you need to instrument your application. That a transaction has failed onto a retail website, then you need to know why the transaction has failed. Then you will get into the relevant logs from that transaction, and then logs will tell you that what is the problem. So that level of marriage people were not doing between logs and traces, and that is the reason people were paying so much. Like they were sending thousands of matrices and thousands of GBs of logs, but there was no correlation. But with the advent of these new tools, or especially the open telemetry, the correlation is happening pretty fine, and the open source is really playing a very major role here. And not only people, the companies are adopting the open source flavor of open
Mhm.
telemetry in their licensed tools for
No,
that matter.
you are right. However, like even if I start it today, right, and I start using these observability tool, whether the company built on an open source or have just bought some SaaS. One key challenge, which also coming it more from the CFO side, is when they look at their bills, right? So the observability tools bill is actually higher than their the overall compute bill within the cloud infrastructure. Is there a technical justification, or is it just only few
Correct.
of company which are not able to handle it properly?
Yeah, I would answer it into a practical live, deployment that we have done for one of the customer. Actually, people are not, deploying observability tools wisely. When I say wisely, now we have deployed a Grafana-based implementation for a fintech customer, UK-based fintech customer. We have used all the open source flavor of Grafana into non-prod environment, and taking a learning and taking a best practices from there, like introducing the cardinality approach, then into the production we are using Grafana Cloud. Now, what is the difference between these two? In production, we are using licensed tools of Grafana. In non-prod, we are using open source. So actually, we have already reduced the bill to half, right? So that is one of the best practice. And with the advent of Grafana Cloud, we are paying only that much which we are sending to Grafana on a SaaS based service. Now, with the advent of Grafana Cloud onto production, we are getting a Grafana Assistant, which is a AI assistant tool, which is helping me to reduce the bills as well as to reduce the issues that we are getting in production. So, to answer your question quickly, we can definitely reduce 50% of cost by not using the license tool into non-prod environment, at least into non-critical applications. And for critical, we can use license tool and then use this AI assistant to reduce the bill. That is the first and the foremost thing. And second answer to this question is, we need to filter what is not needed. That is very, very important. Not everyone is aware. We are just shipping everything because we do not know how to filter those things and get the relevant data. So two things are very important: usage of non-prod environment as an open source, and then filtering out
Mhm.
what is not needed, and you can
So
use
you are
cardinality
saying,
for
yeah,
that.
definitely we see more and more data increase. It is one because definitely the more and more production is being shipped into the production environment. But second, also which we also see it even with the Gen AI, that new and new applications are being created. But definitely, if you look holistically, if you look at your entire data pipeline, this is something where you can define control. It doesn't mean that you just don't send the data, but it is like a what type of the data is important, and through the logs,
Correct.
etc., you can verify whether that data is something where I.
Actually, you are spot on. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. You're spot on. So in our data pipeline, we need to be very, sure that whatever we are sending, is it really relevant?
Another shift which we see nowadays is the open telemetry. I think this is one of the growing project within the CNCF
Yeah.
community, specifically after Kubernetes. It is already the talk of the town. But tell me, is it Open Telemetry actually ready to replace the easy and the proprietary agents, or we are just trading a monthly subscription fee for a massive engineering overhead to maintain our own pipelines?
Yeah. So you have actually touched upon my favorite topic of open telemetry. It is actually a framework that is really, really very popular. And you said just now asked, is it going to replace the existing tools? No, it's a tool agnostic. Actually, tools are adopting this framework. So open telemetry has make himself so popular. So he's not going to the users. Users are coming back to its, framework. So how it works, it's a framework. We are processing data, whatever is required and the non-required data is not being processed. Now, if I take an example of Grafana agent, which was used to collect the telemetry data, has been deployed by Grafana Alloy. It is an open telemetry based, collector. Let's talk about another tool, New Relic. New Relic also is having open telemetry based agent, and similarly for Datadog. So to cut short this answer, companies are shifting to adopt open telemetry because it is tool agnostic, and there are so many features, there are so many contributors. I have also personally contributed to open telemetry, so it is actually a very good framework. Now, licensed tools are adopting it, and this is not going to
Mhm.
go in the near future,
Okay. And
for sure.
the another open source related trend, which of course you are the expert, is very famous in the industry, is the Grafana and Prometheus combination. So in this world where every vendor claims to be open source compatible, where do you see the most of these the fake promising happening, and which are the companies which are actually leaving the open source tag with them?
Yeah, since I have been an open source enthusiast for last 4 to 5 years, I am a personal, I would advocator for Grafana. I'm being a Grafana champion also from Grafana Labs. Why? Now, the why keyword is earlier, Grafana was open source only. The Grafana Cloud and Grafana Enterprise have been introduced in the recent past. So people have given this back to the community that please use this as open source. Don't, buy the license tool, and that is the reason Grafana is popular. And why Prometheus and Grafana based stacks are really, really popular, because Prometheus is able to collect all the time series data into an open source flavor. And if you have production related data, you can store the data onto the cloud. So that is the reason it is so popular. No other tool is providing this level of feature, right? So long story short, Grafana Prometheus based observability is very, very popular. And not only this, many big tech companies like Apple and certain banks are using Grafana based observability, open source one, and they are storing the data into the cloud. So they are not buying the hefty other license tool for their observability bill. At least they are saving cost on license. Infra they are storing in cloud. At least they are saving the cost on licenses. So that is the reason Grafana is so popular when it comes to observability. And I don't think it is already in the magic quadrant, the leaders in magic quadrant. I don't think it is
Mhm.
going to get replaced soon
No,
by some
and
other
what
tool.
you are also saying is, hey, of course, these tools are like the open source. Other than this, for example, there are others which are also acting as an open source, like they are fully based on the open source, or they are fully supporting the open telemetry. It's up to you, your choice. If you do have the expertise, you can go ahead and run on your own. But for example, if you don't have an
Correct.
engineering capacity, and also you can leverage their cloud version. All right.
That is
So
right.
now we
Yeah.
are in 2026, where we are not just talking about AI ops anymore, which used to be a legacy term. Here now we have already started talking about agentic AI. AI that doesn't show a graph, but actually go investigate the problem and eventually suggest the fix. Is this a trend which you see actually working in production, or is it just more auto healing, and then there is like a wrapper has been written on top of it?
No, so as you said, in 2026, yes, this is a trend, and that is going to happen. And companies have start adopting agentic AI observability framework even in their production. Now, there's a caveat when I say this. Why? They are not completely given away their issues to agents to resolve it, but they have kept human in loop, meaning they are asking it any problem. Like, I have done the MCP based integration to my Grafana, so I normally ask what is my infrastructure CPU status for last 30 minutes. So that AI agent is giving all the summary, and then I'm asking, can you please do this change? Can you please deploy an agent? Can you please create a dashboard? So I'm always in the loop. So I am not giving everything to the agent, so that agent is doing, and then it is taking away not my job, but it is taking away the automatic AI ops feature. So human in loop will always be there, whether you go with the Grafana Assistant AI agent, or Datadog Bits AI agent, or any agent. So there's a problem also. If suppose if we give everything to AI agent, and it found that there's a 404 error, and you have deployed a a framework or a workflow, whenever this error is coming, this alert is coming, do something. And recently you have seen a Terraform script has actually bring down the production for one of the giant company for 3 data centers. So what I'm trying to say, human in loop will always be there. We are not giving the full control or full hands to the AI agents. So people are using it, people started using it, but there's a
Mhm.
the final click is always done by human
Yeah.
for
No, you are right,
implementation.
and this is where you need to also see, for example, what is the risk which you are introducing. For example, and these technologies are new. When I say new,
Correct.
people might say, "Hey, these are not the new technology," but they are new from the observability point of view, because observability has always been focused more on the day two operations, and that's where these agentic AI, or the more and more agents started getting traction and getting started running into the production. But as you already mentioned, there were like quite few outages, and those could happen, like even if like you want to try it out, then the agent go misinterpret a trace and say, hey, yes, I now need to start remediating, and then he kills something which it should not be. So your human in the loop approach is the one, I think, which will bring more trust from the observability as well
Yeah.
as into the agentic world.
Yeah. And one more line I want to add, since you said, rightly said, it's a day two operations. Observability is always a day two. Day one, we are never into the picture. And when you do day two operations, you need to be a little bit more, certain what are you asking, what are you doing. So human in loop is always important for those
All right,
activities.
so we got some long answer. Now we wanted to have some short and sharper answers. So I know you are expertise on the Prometheus, but we see another technology is Victoria metrics. If I have to use them for scale, which one shall I choose?
Okay, so Victoria matrix is also on the same approach, getting the store,
Mhm.
the time series data and then storing it into influx DB. But to be very honest, on my personal experience, people are using more Prometheus. There are a couple of reasons. Grafana supports LGTM stack, and when it comes to metrics, Grafana says store the metrics in Prometheus and ultimately to Mimir. So that is the reason. There's no other. I would say that Victoria matrix is bad. That is also very popular when it comes to production storage. It is all what you do, how you want to do. So Grafana always recommends LGTM, where Mimir is the leader. Prometheus and Mimir is the
All
leader.
right. And while developers started collecting these metrics in form of metrics, which started getting popular with the Prometheus, do you see certain overrated metrics which developers still track, but like they are not making sense in the newer age?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That is the problem of the R. Suppose I installed my node exporter for getting the infrastructure metrics for my VM or for my Kubernetes cluster. I'm shipping everything, which is an overhead egress cost. Meaning, suppose if you're sending it to SaaS, I'm sending whatever I don't need it. So we need to. So Grafana Cloud, I'm again advocating Grafana. Grafana Cloud gives an opportunity to identify the best cardinality matrices for you, and then it gives a very beautiful dashboard, and then you can remove those matrices that are not needed. Like for example, you want to get the transaction logs for each user ID. So rather than using user ID, you get the transaction error for particular endpoint, which is the low cardinality. So that is very, very important, and actually people are paying more for they do not know. I mean, they are spending hundreds of dollars, and they might be their job can be done in $20 also, right? So that is the real deal.
Another question I do have is, I now see lots and lots of the job openings with the title as the observability engineer. Going forward, maybe like in next 3 or 5 years, do you think this title will be existing, or it will be just part of like SRE or the DevOps skill set?
Yeah, I think there will be a little bit shift because nobody will only ask for observability engineer. People will ask either as an SRE engineer with the AI flavor for sure, because nowadays I am not writing PromQL queries. When I say I means any observability engineer. It is asking to your AI prompt, can you get me the last 30 minutes of CPU analysis, and it will create a PromQL query for you. So it is all about a user should be wisely enough to use any agent, get the data, and then implement it. So only observability engineer, I think it will be a problem after 5 years. But if you're keeping yourself in loop, you're keeping updated with the in latest trends, then the titles will change, but the technologies will remain with you always,
No,
right?
definitely, and I think it is also right what you said. Like, not will be a one specific engineer. That engineer could be contributing it to the multiple space, and this is the trend which we have seen also from the olden days,
Correct.
where there used to be a separate, like, the system engineering team, network team, database team, then the middleware team, and then the application team. Now all those roles are done by a single team, and the engineers are more acting as a end to end,
Correct.
or like the full stack role.
Correct. That is right. And nowadays, maybe one more line. Nowadays, even RFP ask from clients are, can you give me two engineers with an AI flavor, right? Rather than asking five engineers, they're asking two engineers with AI. So AI is becoming very, very important now. At least how to use any LLM model, how to work with agents. They're not asking as a data scientist, but they're asking how to
No,
is really
that's for
important.
sure, and that is like the one term for like the AI in observability, and then the another term which is also picking it up is the observability for AI, because as more and more workload will start becoming in AI, you
Oh,
need
yeah.
to have the observability for those LLM, for those agents, or eventually the
Yes.
agentic AI world.
Yeah, that is again very getting very popular. One more line on that. So Grafana has given OpenLIT framework to observe your LLM models, how you are paying, how much you are paying, all those things. Even Gemini also have given OpenTelemetry. Again, OpenTelemetry is coming. OpenTelemetry based collectors to see how your LLM models, how your cost is going, how many tokens have been spent on every prompt. So that level of observability is also coming into the picture with again
No, it is good
OpenTelemetry
to see,
flavor.
right? At least on the technology standardization, we standardize on the open telemetry, and that's why like even so many type of the LLM or the agentic flavor came, and we could observe them. Else, it would have been a massive effort to build it for every provider, and then from the consumer perspective as well. So now it is like you standardize with the open telemetry, and then you focus on your dashboard, or the query to make sense of this data. Bhupesh,
Correct.
also
Yeah,
share
rightly
us
said.
some more about your own YouTube channel. How did you start your journey? What's you are doing nowadays with that channel?
Wow. Yeah, that is an again interesting side of me. So I started that work 3 years ago. So how it got started? So whenever I was doing any POC for my project or for my any customer, I used to write so many things and then store it onto the GitHub. And again, after 3 months, I need to do it again for some other customer. Then I was little bit perplexed. What should I do? Should I do it again from scratch? So rather than reinventing the wheel again and again, I created certain code spaces and store it into GitHub and creating those videos initially only for me so that I can remember what has happened, what I did for 3 months ago. Then I recorded a video, couple of videos and put it into a YouTube channel and got a very, very valid, response from the users. And then I started doing it, and then actually it make me, kind of little bit into it, so that I'm picking any new thing from the open source world and then creating it. And with that, I've actually learned a lot in last 3 years. And there are a couple of videos which has actually gone a kind of viral, not viral, but yeah, close to 100K, which I always feel proud, and I'm again happy to give it
No,
back to my
that's a
users.
very good way of learning, and also like sharing it back to the community, so the community learns it, and then the like I would say like the video format is just one of the medium. Another medium is like the you contributed through code, then you contributed through Meetup, and I see you are a very much active eventually in the community. So that's also good to see you in such events, and bring more around the open source observability, how they can use and how they can learn.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I will keep doing it.
Thank you for keeping it real. The takeaway specifically for me and for the audience is, if your observability cost is more than your business, then you are not observing, then you are just wasting. But there are mechanism, take a look on those,
Correct.
and if you are not standardized, take a look on the Open Telemetry standard. And to me, Open Telemetry standard are a great way of learning. Even if like you might not be using, you could just fine tune your the proprietary agent a bit, and then get the same value. And now with the intelligence being built into the query layer, it's also very much easier. For example, now building those PromQL query, now we go to another tool, then learning another query language and all, it becomes
Correct.
super
Correct.
easy. So I hope the observability still continue to provide the value, specifically with the AI and the agentic world.
Yeah, sure. And I would say really thanks to you, Kuldeep, for having me on the show. And it was one of the finest technical podcasts that I have in the recent past. So I can definitely say you can also, help me in doing my next set of observability sessions so that we can collaborate and
Sure,
do it
Bhupesh.
for other users.
That's it
Thank
for
you.
this episode of Techie Talks with Kuldeep. Until next time, keep learning and keep innovating. Thank you for watching.